How is it possible that a simple third place has left Ferrari's own boss shocked? Because what Frédéric Vasseur saw in Lewis Hamilton's data after the Chinese Grand Prix wasn't just the performance of one driver. It was something much more disturbing for the rest of the grid. Hamilton not only took the Ferrari to the podium in Shanghai, but his numbers began to reveal something that not even Maranello's own engineers were completely clear about their car. And when the team compared their telemetries with internal references, they discovered that the Briton was driving the Ferrari in a way that unlocked a potential that they had barely detected in the development of the car. This internal analysis provoked an immediate reaction within the team, because for the first time since Hamilton arrived, Ferrari began to understand that perhaps the car's true limit had not yet been seen on the track. Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. Lewis Hamilton's third place at the Chinese Grand Prix might seem, at first glance, simply a good result for Ferrari in the first races of the season. A solid podium, important to score points and confirm that the team is in the fight. But within Maranello, the story was completely different. Because when the race in Shanghai ended and the team began to analyze the real data of the car, Frédéric Vasseur found something that he did not expect to see so soon in the Ferrari project with Hamilton. It wasn't just a podium. It was a much deeper technical signal about the real potential of the car and what the Brit was being able to extract from it. The analysis began as it always does after a Grand Prix. Comparisons of pace, telemetry, tire consumption, energy management, and car behavior in each sector of the circuit. But very quickly the engineers began to notice something different about Hamilton's laps. The performance curves showed a very unusual combination for a car that is still in an early stage of development within a new driver-team partnership. Not only was Hamilton setting competitive one-lap times, he was accomplishing something much more difficult, maintaining consistent stability over long runs, something that typically takes many races to appear when a driver is still adapting to a new car. When those numbers were compared directly to other internal team benchmarks, that's when the real surprise came. The telemetry revealed that Hamilton was driving the Ferrari in a way that seemed to fit almost perfectly with the design of the car. Its late but extremely clean braking allowed it to maintain a very efficient minimum speed in the curve, while its way of applying the accelerator at exit generated much more stable traction than what the engineers had seen up to that point. This balance between aggressiveness and control caused the tire wear and energy management curves to fit better with the aerodynamic behavior of the car. For Vasseur, this detail was key, because what began to appear in the data was not simply the adaptation of a driver to his new team, but something much more interesting from a technical point of view. The numbers suggested that the Ferrari had greater potential than the team itself had managed to identify during the pre-season development process. In other words, Hamilton was finding performance in areas of the car that weren't even fully optimized in the theoretical model Ferrari had worked with over the winter. The impact within the team increased further when engineers began to study how Hamilton was using the car's hybrid systems. The way in which it managed the delivery of the MGUK and the recovery of energy during the different moments of the lap was different to what Ferrari had considered to be the most efficient way of doing it. However, on the track the numbers showed that this approach worked better than expected. That reading forced the performance department to review several power maps and hybrid system utilization procedures, something that normally doesn't happen this early in a season. So when Vasseur spoke internally about the China analysis, the conversation was no longer solely about Sunday's result. What had really changed was the way Ferrari was beginning to understand its own car. Hamilton's data was offering a new reference for how the car should be driven to unlock its maximum performance. And that discovery opened up a much bigger question within the team. If Hamilton had been able to find that potential in just a few races, how much more could it show up when Ferrari began developing the car based on that same data? As Ferrari delved into the analysis of the data from the Chinese Grand Prix, the initial shock that had surprised Frédéric Vasseur began to transform into something even more important, a new technical direction to understand the car's behavior. Because the numbers that Lewis Hamilton left in Shanghai not only explained how he had achieved that third place, but also began to reveal a pattern that could change the way Ferrari would develop the car for the rest of the season. What initially seemed like a good individual performance by the Briton was becoming a technical reference for the entire team. Engineers began studying each sector of Hamilton's lap in extreme detail. The telemetry showed something that especially caught the attention of the performance department. The Ferrari responded better when the car was driven with a more progressive transition between braking and acceleration, exactly the type of driving that Hamilton has perfected for years in Formula One. This caused the car to maintain a more constant aerodynamic stability when cornering, reducing small pressure losses that until then Ferrari had considered inevitable within the design of the car. That difference became even more evident when engineers began comparing tire degradation curves during long stints. Hamilton not only maintained a competitive pace for many consecutive laps, but he also did so with a more controlled degradation than the team expected for that circuit. This meant that the Ferrari could sustain a high pace for longer without compromising the condition of the tires, something essential in a race like Shanghai, where management was a determining factor in the strategies. But what was truly decisive for Vasseur was understanding why this was happening. And the answer lay in the way Hamilton balanced the car through each phase of the corner. Its late braking style allowed the moment of weight transfer to the front axle to be delayed, keeping the car more stable at the entrance of the curve. Then, by applying the accelerator extremely progressively, I managed to get the car out with greater traction without causing sudden loss of grip. That combination kept the Ferrari within its optimal operating window for longer, something that engineers had not been able to reproduce as consistently in their previous simulations. At that moment, a very important conclusion began to emerge within Ferrari. The car had potential that had not yet been fully exploited. And the most interesting thing was that this potential seemed to align naturally with Hamilton's driving style. This did not necessarily mean that the car was designed specifically for him, but it did mean that his driving was revealing a more efficient way to use the car's aerodynamic and energy package. That revelation forced the team to rethink some of the development directions they had considered entering the season. Therefore, after the analysis of China, the technical department began to work with Hamilton's data as a new reference for the car's performance. The simulations began to be adjusted using their driving curves, the hybrid system maps began to be revised based on their energy management, and engineers began to study how they could adapt future evolutions of the car to maximize the performance that Hamilton was achieving on the track. In other words, third place in Shanghai was starting to directly influence Ferrari's technical roadmap for the upcoming races. And that is where the true dimension of what happened in China appears. Because when a driver manages to alter the way a team understands its own car, it's no longer just about performance on the track. This is about technical influence within the project. And in just a few races with Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton was already leaving a mark that could define the car's development throughout the season. As the hours passed after the Chinese Grand Prix, it began to become clear within Ferrari that Lewis Hamilton's third place had implications that went far beyond Sunday's visible result. What Frédéric Vasseur had seen in the data was not simply the performance of an experienced driver, but confirmation that Ferrari had on its hands an extremely valuable combination, a car with as yet undiscovered potential, and a driver capable of finding that performance even before the team itself fully understood it. These types of situations are rare in modern Formula One. Normally, the development of a car follows a fairly defined line from the beginning of the season, with evolutions planned months before based on simulations, wind tunnel data, and aerodynamic analysis. But what happened after China forced Ferrari to rethink part of that path? Because when a driver begins to reveal car behaviors that were not fully anticipated in the team's theoretical model, it means that there is still room to unlock performance that was hidden within the car's design. For Vasseur, this situation also has a strategic dimension within the team. Ferrari not only needs pure speed to fight for victories, it also needs technical consistency to sustain a winning project throughout an entire season. And Hamilton's data showed exactly that kind of consistency. Stability on long runs, efficient management of hybrid energy, and control of tire were clear signs that the Brit was finding a way to drive the car that could be sustained for full races without compromising performance. This has an immediate effect on the way Ferrari plans its near future. Because from that moment on, the performance department not only analyzes what the car can do in ideal conditions, but also what Hamilton has proven he is capable of extracting in real race conditions. That difference between theory and practice is precisely where many Formula One championships end up being decided. And in China, Ferrari began to understand that perhaps it had been underestimating some of the potential of its own project. Furthermore, this scenario reinforces one of the main reasons why Ferrari decided to bet on Hamilton. It's not just about his experience or his world titles, but his ability to interpret a car from a technical point of view and help the team understand it better. In today's Formula One, where the differences between teams are minimal and every tenth of a second can change a race, having a driver who can translate track sensations into useful data for development is a huge advantage. And that is exactly what Vasseur began to see in the analysis after the Chinese Grand Prix. Therefore, within Ferrari, the Shanghai podium is now interpreted in a completely different way. Is not just a good result in the standings, nor a simple step forward compared to the previous race. Is the first clear indication that the Ferrari project with Hamilton could have a much higher ceiling than it seemed at the beginning of the season. And if engineers can turn those data readings into real improvements to the car over the next few races, what started as a third-place finish could end up being remembered as the moment Ferrari began to discover its true potential. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.